What's up guys, Riding with D. This is the Trailmaster TM 31 update. Let's see how this thing's holding up. All right, so the Trailmaster TM 31. If y'all checked out some of my earlier videos I've done, this is one I did a review on a long time ago. I've actually had this bike going on 3 years now. So she's definitely been used. So if you look at it and you're thinking, it don't really look used, I always clean all my bikes after every time I use them. So trying to keep the mud stains and stuff like that off. This bike is pretty much turned into the buddy bike. That's what I call it. So have friends over, they don't have something to ride, maybe they didn't bring theirs or something like that. They can just hop on this bike and go. It's easy to ride, air cooled. It's, not a ton of power, anything like that. But a lot of people are usually interested in these type of bikes. You can get them a lot cheaper than you can the Japanese brands. But to some degree, you kind of get what you pay for. So a few little odd things, which some of my other videos, this might not necessarily be the bike's fault, but I will say, there's a lot of odd little things. Like, I don't know if you can tell, like these little fittings are corroded really bad with rust. There's odd corrosion in other places. I know in some of my older videos when I was looking at this, a lot of people were saying this, some of this was dirt. Some of this is actually not dirt, it's actually certain corrosion over the caps and stuff like that. You could sand it off, it would definitely come off, not a big deal. The petcock, this, you can actually feel crunchiness inside it whenever you're turning it on and off. So another thing, most trail bikes have a reserve. This one doesn't. Well, it's just on off, so you'd obviously have to, easy peasy, you just check on your fuel levels. But if you're thinking that, hey, I'm gonna hit the trails, not really check my gas before I go, yeah, you might run out. There's not a reserve, just on off, similar to like your small little MX box, things like that. Some of the problems I've had with this thing. So the first one, which I mentioned, the other one, the first problem I ever had was the front rotor was really bad warp just right out of the box. You'd hit the front brakes and everything would shake. The suspension, I don't know if all the brands are like this, because if you actually look in the book, the front forks look different. The book that I provided, they're actually adjustable. These are not, that I can tell. So yeah, something sort of odd with that, but they're awful. They've gotten worse as this bike's been used. It's got a good bit of hours on it now. So yeah, they've gotten a lot worse as far as how they feel. You might be able to tell it or maybe hear it. They bottom out really easy. Most people change the chain whenever they get these bikes. I haven't this one yet. I just constantly have to adjust it. But not a big deal. That comes with most ever bike. The starter, it does work, but it acts sort of, it doesn't want to engage sometimes. It acts like it's too hot. It's sort of odd. You'll have to sit there and sort of click it. That's only been the other problem. It does have a kickstart. So yeah, a lot of y'all commented on the last video. So yeah, this one obviously doesn't have a spring return like most pegs. Sort of hear the crunchiness in it. I got a little bit of dirt, but it's made to move out of the way, that way you can actually kick start this bike, and it does work. It's not great, but I mean, just like anything else, but hey, I like that it's there. A lot of bikes nowadays don't come with this, so if the starter doesn't work, hey, you got a backup. Other than that, the actual engine and stuff like that has been basically flawless. I mean, this thing has always run. A big thing is to always check the bolts on these things, especially right after you get them. The main ones, I put marks on them just to where I can do a quick look and make sure they haven't backed out. So something to take in consideration whenever you're looking into that. So again, the other one, you can see it is getting worse. See how the fender here is really close to the exhaust. I think you can see that on camera. You see how it's pretty much melting it everywhere. So that's definitely a problem. Still not too bad. I mean, I could easily just file this off and nobody would probably really know. They would just think, oh, it's an older bike, it has this. But I mean, something to consider if you're buying one of these. It's just little odd things like that you sort of run across whenever you're dealing with bikes like this. I've said it in my other videos, but just in case this is the first one you're watching has to do with this bike, have to have the Nibbi Carb. That definitely made this bike a lot easier to deal with, crank up. I'll leave a link in the description. That way if it's something you're looking into, if you actually have one of these. It definitely made it where this bike actually starts and runs right without the weird hiccups and things like that. Another oddity to it, and people can say what they want, it could just be that maybe they have a slow leak, but every time I want to ride this, of course it sets, but just like today, they're not all the way flat, but it's like they get down to a really low PSI and I have to put air in the tires. Buddies come over, well, we got to put air in the tires. Something I don't really have to do with my other bikes, but these are odd brand tires, so it could have something to do with that, or they could have a weird valve stem problem, you know, something I haven't really diagnosed, but it is both of them, front and back. But yeah, really odd, kind of annoying, you know, but not a huge deal, but it's just an oddity to have to deal with. Other than that, everything's wearing pretty good. I mean, like I said, this, you know, going on 3 years, I keep it clean as much as I can, but it is used. So it's actually holding up relatively well, but yeah, it's just a few little odd things that I haven't had to deal with on other bikes, but you also deal with other things on other bikes. So it's just something to consider if you're looking for one of these, and you know, maybe long term, kind of some things you might have to deal with. Well, enough talking. Let's take this thing for a ride and just see how it goes. All right, so just real quick before we take it for a ride, just in case this is your first video, I'm 5'10", 155. You can see my knees are bent. Flat foot, obviously. Easy, you know, plenty of, if you're shorter than me, this bike will fit you. So yeah, something to look at if you're my size, or if you're actually a little smaller or a little bigger. So let's try the kickstart. So again, what you would do, this doesn't have a spring return. It has a spring in it, but it doesn't return. You would move that out of the way. It's like any other kick. See if we can get her to crank up. Try to. Hey, it's a pain, but it does work. Starter don't work, you do have the backup. All right, guys, so Trailmaster TM 31. Let's see how she's feeling after a few years of ownership. The suspension, not good. Engine and power feels pretty good, especially for a trail bike. I mean, it's not enough to where you can just blip the throttle and make her lift up on you. Suspension is awful. That was bad. So the suspension's definitely gotten worse throughout the years. When I first got it, I noticed that it wasn't great. But now, as time's gone, it's gotten a lot more hours on it. Again, it's a buddy bike, so I ride it every now and then. Somebody comes over, they need a bike to ride. This is pretty much the one that a lot of people would choose because it's easier to ride, you know. It's a cheaper bike. Not many people are worried about it. The suspension being like it is, it just throws you from one side to the other. Which is not great. Y'all let me know in the comments if yours is like this, or if y'all have a different suspension than this thing, because if that was mitigated, it would be a great bike. Definitely doesn't give you confidence, it just kind of throws you where you want to go, or not where you want to go rather, it just throws you where it wants to go. So yeah, power's good, delivery of the power's good, get the Nibbi Carb, definitely helps out. Now let's say you're not gonna just attack the trails real harshly. If you're gonna sort of creep along, might could handle the suspension being like it is, but I think it's definitely worn down to where it almost just feels like it's nothing but a spring on there. So that's something that if you're going to get one of these bikes, just be aware of it. You know, try to maybe ask what kind's on it, maybe get a picture of what exactly is actually on the bike that you're getting. They have different models now, so. But again, the book that I got with this one showed a completely different type of suspension. It actually showed adjustable. It actually says adjustable on it, so. Oh, did you hear that? I hope you heard that, because that's what you got. Oh. Gears are clunky. I changed the oil on this thing a lot because it just has like the little screen filter. It doesn't have the paper filter and the screen. So like for instance, the TTR, it has the screen to where you drain and then the paper filter as well. This thing, as far as I know, only has the screen. So I changed the oil quite frequently in it. Not after every ride, but probably every few rides, just simply because it doesn't have great filtering on it. But little funny little things. I mean, you hear the little squeaky squeak with that. The clutch doesn't sound great, but I mean, hey, it works. Not a big deal. Actually, here's something like, I don't know if that's a bearing or what, something's sort of roaring. I hope you can hear it bottoming out the way it's doing, because just so you know that I'm not just making this stuff up. Because a lot of people want to talk crap about these bikes. I'm actually like them a good bit, but it's definitely not helping. So would I recommend this bike? Hey, if you're handy, it's one of those things that you're gonna have to be if you get one. So what I mean by that, it's gonna come in a crate unless you get it from some sort of, you know, one of those little go-kart shops that are usually local and they just have a lot of little Trailmasters and KOs and all this X-Pros or whatever. So if you buy it direct or from somewhere that'll send it to you in a crate, you're gonna have to be handy to put it together. And also to tune it. You're gonna have to sort of understand a carburetor, get it tuned. I would suggest the Nibbi Carb for this bike. I'll leave a link below again, that way if it's something that you're looking into. I would also suggest if there is hopefully they've fixed it. Again, this thing, I've had it a few years, so it is older. Maybe they're just coming with completely different suspension now. If they did, this would be a great beginner bike. I've rode for a little while and this thing will still sort of toss you around on the trail just because how bad the suspension is. For instance, like the TTR, as old as it is, and as far as I know, it's never been rebuilt. Of course, I bought it used. It feels way better, the suspension, and how much confidence it gives you compared to this thing. So if you're handy, if you want something new, the engine on this thing, I believe, is sound. I think it'll last a long time as long as you maintain it. But you have to look at a couple different things. So let's say that you don't really know how long you're gonna ride. If you're just kind of getting into it, but you are handy, I would suggest just buying a used TTR or CRF. And here's why. It's not that they're just so much better of a bike than this one, but if this suspension was fixed on this, this would be a great bike. It would be on the same level as those. But if you bought this thing and decide that, okay, it isn't really for me, I want to get something else, or get into something else, get rid of it, you're going to basically lose about half of how much this thing costs. I see them all the time. I mean, just a year old, they're about half the price of what you get for them new. And that's not even counting. That's counting if you put it together yourself. That's not counting if you bought it from a shop and you pay for the assembly fees and all this kind of stuff. So if you buy a TTR, used CRF, if you get a pretty good deal on it, you know, more than likely you could just about get almost get all your money back after you've rode it. You know, things, or if you have something and you want to move up to something else, same thing. That's the only thing about these, they just lose their value. People don't, you know, they're just not a trusted brand. So just keep that in mind if you get them. Great bike, great engine. Suspension on mine, really bad. It's gotten worse throughout the years. The other little things I pointed out, not such a big deal, but something to consider if you're gonna get one of these. So if you're still staying tuned, thank you so much for watching. Leave a comment below if you want to know some more about this bike, if you want to see some more. If I still have it years to come, I'll keep doing updates about it. That way we kind of know the longevity of these things. Stay tuned for more, guys. Thanks for watching.